let's talk about Kiki's Pizza Delivery Service. In my new review style, since it did slightly win out over my old review style in the straw poll, doesn't mean I'm going to keep it, doesn't mean I'm not going to change it up a little bit down the line, but I am going to keep working in this style for the time being. That said, there are spoilers for the episode in this review, so keep that in mind if you haven't seen it yet. To briefly cover the plot of this episode, Steven, while getting ready to spend a night to himself, is surprised when it is Kiki, not Jenny, who delivers the pizza that he intends to eat for dinner. According to her, Jenny had to take the pizza-mobile into the shop to be repaired, so Kiki is covering for her, running all of the pizzas to their destinations. After eating an entire pizza himself and passing out on the couch, Steven, presumably because he has pizza on the mind, dreams of Kiki being drowned in the cheese of a giant pizza and saving her life. He goes to tell Kiki about his dream and overhears that Kiki actually lied to him the previous night, that she's been covering for Jenny so that Jenny can go out and do the kinds of things that Jenny likes to do. He thinks nothing of it and tells Kiki about his dream, but it turns out they actually shared the dream. Steven had actually accidentally migrated into Kiki's subconscious while she was sleeping and experienced a recurring nightmare along with her. And apparently because he saved her from the nightmare, this is the first time in a long time that she's actually had a good night's sleep. So she enlists his help to fight off the nightmare every night for the foreseeable future. However, fighting in his dreams leaves Steven exhausted the next day, and eventually he has to tell Kiki that he can't help her anymore. But he does suggest that that night, they try to find the source of the dream and put an end to it once and for all. They literally fly deeper into Kiki's subconscious, over an underground river of cheese to a cavern made entirely of pizza where Kiki is faced with a demonic visage of her sister made of pizza toppings. And Steven deduces that all of this is happening because Kiki is lying to herself and to Jenny, that working such long hours and covering for Jenny every single night is stressing her out. It is getting to her despite the fact that she keeps telling herself it isn't. Even though Kiki seems very adverse to telling her sister no, Steven is able to convince her that it's okay to do so. She does, and the nightmare ends. The next day, Steven goes and talks to Jenny and discovers that she is covering for Kiki so that Kiki can run off some of the stress that she'd been building up. And Steven passes out from exhaustion. And this wasn't an amazing episode. It wasn't a huge standout episode. I didn't find it quite as enjoyable as Restaurant Wars, for example, but it was definitely an interesting episode and important in its own way. The imagery of Steven and Kiki flying deeper into Kiki's subconscious was actually surprisingly creepy, considering that they were surrounded by nothing more than pizza toppings. Simply because that scenery was pretty freaking creative. An ocean of cheese that comes to life, an underground river filled with killer anchovies and pepperoni, an underground cavern where a demonic visage of someone you love rises from the depths and tries to absorb you into itself. It's a lot of the same kind of imagery you would expect to see in horror properties, and yet it manages to keep to the pizza motif the whole way through. I thought that was very impressive. I also thought the design of Cheese Demon Jenny was pretty freaking creepy. The pepperoni eyes were just so dead and unexpressive that it really irked me. And this entire motif was yet more anime references. It's as if they're trying to get all of their anime references out now because they're afraid they're not going to have time later or something. And unlike the last couple of episodes where I embarrassingly didn't know exactly what properties the specific anime references were parodying, those episodes being Beach City Drift and Restaurant Wars, I actually did get all the anime references in this episode and managed to pair them to their correct properties. The name of the episode, Kiki's Pizza Delivery Service, is of course a reference to the 1989 Studio Ghibli film Kiki's Delivery Service, which I only saw once years ago, so if there were any direct references within the plot of the episode to that movie, I didn't catch them, but the title itself is a reference at the very least. When Steven initially arrives to help Kiki the first time by accident, his rocket feet and his missile arms are clear references to the anime Astro Boy. Twice during other dream sequences, when he summons first a giant pizza cutter and then a giant cheese grater, his stance in those two instances are meant to be reminiscent of Dragon Ball Z. And the final scene of Kiki's final nightmare, where she and Steven sit on the beach and look out at the horizon at a pair of giant pizza slices, is a clear reference to Neon Genesis Evangelion. But just like with Beach City Drift, the thing that stood out to be the most in this episode was actually the theme. Yeah, this episode is about Steven and Kiki fighting cheese demons inside Kiki's subconscious, but it was also about the importance of saying no. In the context of when someone asks you to do something that is too much, and you know it's too much, you can say no to them. It doesn't matter how much you care about that person or how much they hold over your head that they care about you. Your health is important, and if that person really cares about you, they will understand when you tell them that something that they're asking of you is too much. In fact, Steven basically says this much himself. After he tells Kiki that he can't help her anymore after that final dream, that it's just too much for him, she understands. Yet she's unable to see that Jenny would also understand if Kiki told her that her sister was asking too much of her. She's convinced herself that because Jenny is her sister, that she has to do everything that Jenny asks. That she should do everything that Jenny asks. But the kind of things that Jenny was wanting to do, going to a concert, for example, was not as important as Kiki's health. And at the end, even though Jenny isn't completely thrilled about it, she does understand. And that is a massively important lesson, one that I don't see a lot on television, especially not kids' television. Good job, Steven Universe. All in all, just like these other human-centered episodes, this episode was quite good, and I feel was definitely important to the series in its own way. That said, I think we've spent enough time with the human characters. It's time to get back to the gem stuff. Thankfully, that seems to be exactly what's going to happen in tonight's episode, Monster Reunion. So if you don't mind, I'm going to go ahead and get this review edited and posted so I can watch that episode on time for a change. Who are we kidding? With my luck, the entire episode will leak online while I'm editing this video. All of that said, guys, what did you think of this episode? Let's get a discussion going in the comment section down below. Either way, this has been AJ22, and I will talk to you guys later.